In this final video in our discussion of run-ons and comma splices, this last slide is looking at the comma splice. Now, on this particular slide, we have three examples of comma splices, and you'll notice the 5 methods that I mentioned to correct run-ons can also in some ways be used to correct a comma splice. Now, in the first sentence, we have the cat taunted the dog through the sliding glass door. The dog ran at her and hit the door. This is where we have our comma splice. Now, just as we did in the previous slide, you can use some of those 5 methods to correct this. Just for example, you could add a conjunction to combine together these two sentences. Also, an even easier way to correct this is to make this into a semicolon. If you feel like there needs to be some type of transitional word, you could always say like a phrase like as a result. Now, after that transitional phrase, you would definitely need to add a comma, and then you could add that to combine together the two sentences with a semicolon. Another scenario that you could use is subordination. Similarly to the last slide, you could make this a dependent clause, since, or you could even make this because. Choose the best subordinating conjunction to correct and subordinate. So you could say, since the cat taunted the dog through the sliding glass door, and you need to keep the comma here because this is an introductory dependent clause, the dog ran at her and hit the door. Now, a final way that you could actually correct this is, remember, you could always make these two separate sentences. Now, again, as I mentioned on the last slide, the only problem is you now have two simple sentences, and that could sound really, really choppy. Now, in the second sentence, we have, the potter used coils to form the base of the vase. However, she formed the sides from thin slabs of clay. Now, this would be our comma splice. Now, we have different ways we could correct this. We could put this, change this as a semicolon. Something else we could do is we could ultimately make this into a period. But again, that makes two simple sentences. Another method is if you want to change the way you combine these together, you could keep the comma and then add maybe instead of coordinated conjunction yet. So these are some different methods that you could use to correct these comma splices. All right, in the last sentence, in 3 hours we netted only 2 pounds of shrimp. Because the shrimp were quite small, we used them for shrimp salad. Now what can be tricky here is we have a dependent clause. Remember, dependent clauses open with subordinating conjunctions. And because here is a subordinating conjunction, be careful when this is a compound complex sentence. Make sure that you read where the compound complex sentence needs to logically pause. You're going to have a dependent clause, and it needs to combine with an independent clause that logically makes sense. I mean, just for example, it would make no sense to say in 3 hours we netted only 2 pounds of shrimp because the shrimp were quite small. The size of the shrimp had nothing to do with why they netted only 2 pounds of shrimp. It actually makes more sense to say because the shrimp were quite small, we used them for shrimp salad. That was more the logical reasoning for the shrimp salad. Now, there's different ways you could combine these together for this to make sense. You could add a semicolon here to correct this comma splice. You could also make this into a new sentence in this way. And you could always consider potentially, changing this so it's no longer a dependent clause. There's different ways that you could correct this particular comma splice. Just remember, as far as run-on sentences, you usually have two sentences that come together, but you need to combine them with a comma and a conjunction, a semicolon, or a semicolon and a transitional phrase and a comma. With comma splices, you have two sentences just coming together with a comma, but you need to add a conjunction with that comma, or maybe change that comma to a semicolon. Just remember these different methods of correcting run-ons and comma splices, and choose the method that's going to be the best correction for your error. There's not necessarily one that's the better one. I just discourage you necessarily from always putting a period because you create so many simple sentences. Hopefully this video lesson has benefited you in being able to recognize your comma splices and run-ons. Just remember again those 3 ways to combine your compound sentences, and that's going to help you be aware of those errors and prevent them.